Fear. Fear is what drives avoidant behavior. Fear is one of the most powerful human emotions, and it's also the most irrational. And avoidant behavior is entirely driven by emotion, and that primary emotion is fear. Avoidants were people that were emotionally neglected as children. Their parents were not nurturing and not loving to them in the way that they needed them to be. And the avoidant, as a child, often had their feelings or emotions dismissed. They were not given love. And because of this lack of love, they learned to feel like they were, in fact, unlovable. And because their feelings and emotions were dismissed, they learned to suppress their feelings, to run from them, to run from their problems, and suppress their emotions. And they also learned that anybody that you rely on for your emotional needs is ultimately going to disappoint you, let you down, abandon you, and reject you. These fears, this feeling of being unlovable, it carries through to adulthood. The avoidant feels unlovable, and they are afraid of abandonment and rejection. And they're also afraid of emotional intimacy and engulfment. Now, the fear of abandonment is the core of all of it, because the fear is if they let anybody in, they build a castle wall around their heart. If they let anybody in, this person that they let into their heart is ultimately going to see and figure out that the avoidant is in fact unlovable. And the person's going to reject and abandon the avoidant. And that any emotional intimacy inevitably leads to heartache. Now, avoidants fear losing their independence. As young children, they learn that they can only rely on themselves for their own emotional needs. This creates a sense of hyper-independence, fiercely independent. Now, they fear that if they let somebody into their heart, they're going to lose their independence to this person in a relationship. This is one of the reasons why they fear commitment, because commitment means losing independence, and it also means you have to be emotionally vulnerable for somebody, which avoidants don't want to do since they are emotionally unavailable people. So as the relationship progresses and they spend more time together, intimacy grows, there's talk of commitment, talk of family, talk of marriage, etc., or even post-marriage, when you're married to this person and talking about growing a family in the future. These commitment things cause the avoidant to fear losing their independence or losing their autonomy, and they fear losing their autonomy and independence to a person who is ultimately going to figure out that the avoidant is unlovable and abandon and reject them. So they'll have lost their ability to take care of themselves, they'll have lost their independence, and they'll have lost it to a person who's going to break their heart. So then they'll have a loss of independence and a broken heart, and they'll essentially go splat. That's how the fear of engulfment really ties into the fear of abandonment. And the fear of rejection also ties into the fear of abandonment, because being rejected means that this person's likely going to abandon you, because the avoidant so often had their feelings dismissed as a child. Any kind of rejection feels like a crushing blow to the avoidant. So they fear even asserting their feelings. They fear communicating their opinions because they fear being rejected by the person that they're communicating their feelings, wants, and needs to. And once again, ties into the fear of abandonment. The fear of emotional intimacy also ties into the fear of abandonment, because if you let someone in behind that castle wall, they're going to reject and abandon you. Now, it's all driven by fear. The amygdala, that's the lobe of the brain that controls all the emotions. Avoidant behavior is driven by that amygdala. Even early on in the relationship, when they love bomb you, it's because they have all these bottled up emotions that they've suppressed throughout the years, and they're just bursting out of them because it's the infatuation period. The dopamine is flowing. The avoidant is feeling good. They're feeling that infatuation. They need that validation because they don't know how to internally validate themselves. So they are just relishing all the validation that you're giving them, all the affection that you're giving them, all that dopamine that you're giving them. That's also driven by emotion too. That's driven by their insecurities and their feeling of being unlovable, because that external validation makes them feel better about themselves for a little bit. But that's also driven by fear too. is all really tied into their fears. So understand, if you're dealing with an avoidant, whether it's a current partner or an ex, you are dealing with a person that is primarily driven by fear. Fear is a very tough place to live, and that's where they live. To have all of your relationships dictated by your fears, it's not emotionally healthy, and it's not a very happy place to be. And it can cause the avoidant to feel a profound sense of loneliness. But understand, you didn't cause any of it. You did not cause their childhood attachment wounds. So don't blame yourself, and try to take a step back. And even though this behavior, it doesn't mean we should tolerate it, doesn't mean you should like it or accept it, but understand that it's coming from a place of fear. And to that, it's a good idea to have a little bit of empathy for the fact that this person is in such a state of fear that they're choosing to do emotionally unhealthy things. But it doesn't mean that you have to sit around and take it.